Hi, my name is Adriana Abernathy, and most of us have had or at least had a dog at some point in our lifetimes, whether that be through us personally owning one or connecting with one through friends or family. But there's a lot of things that we don't stop to think about when we look at the dog sitting next to us. We don't stop to think, what did their lives look like before they were domesticated into house pets? Where did they evolve? What did they evolve from? And how exactly did they end up in millions and millions of houses across America? After doing a lot of research looking at case studies and evidence and articles, that's exactly what I'm going to be telling you about today. We're going to start with where dogs, where they came from, when they evolved. And then we're going to move on to the purpose in ancient days. What did they do in ancient days? What did people think about them? And then we're going to end with how exactly they ended up being the dog they are today. How did they end up being man's best friend? Starting with where they evolved from. In an article by CBS News, Abby Drake states that she uses 3D technology to discover when this happened and where they came from. She states they come from wolves, and this didn't happen too long ago. It happened only about 15,000 years ago. She uses 3D technology that looks at 36 different spots on the skull. She looks at spots like the palate of the mouth, the teeth, the muzzle, and the brain case. Not only does she look at these places, she also uses CT scans to look at the actual fossils' skulls. Now, moving on to their lives in ancient times after they evolved from the wolves. About 9,000 years ago, as stated in an article by Pedigree, in ancient civilizations, dogs had a pretty large cultural significance, normally in regards to death practices. In some cases, the deceased were deliberately put out for dogs to consume after they died. They were put out for dogs to eat because this was seen as necessary in order for the dead person's soul to be able to pass over into the afterlife. This is kind of a crazy thing to think about, but this is how dogs gained that kind of cultural significance back then. And these early presumptions about dogs and death gradually evolved into people thinking and believing that dogs not only could ward off, but they could prevent death from happening. Also along this time, this was the beginning of therapy dogs. In ancient Greece, dogs were kept around as co-therapists in healing temples because they thought, they perceived them to have the ability to cure illness, not only cure physical illness, but to cure mental illness as well. They also said they thought they helped with overall well-being for those higher up in society, so they were always kept around. Now, moving on to where pets are today. Pet keeping in its present form is probably a 19th century Victorian invention. At this time, it was perceived as a link with the natural world, and they weren't really threatened by it anymore. Not only were they not threatened by the link with the natural world, they also were able to show kind of the man's demonstration of domination over nature, which was also a huge thing in the Victorian era. So the practice of, pet keeping in Victoria times was kind of seen as like a symbol to show power. And that goes along with how the lower class back then wasn't really allowed to have pets. It reflected their social attitudes, and it shows that pets for the lower class was not appropriate at all because it was thought to encourage the neglect of the lower class's other social duties. So it was not allowed. But now in present day societies, dogs have a number of functional roles. It's not just to show power. It's not just for spiritual beliefs or for death practices. There's a lot of other things used today, such as personality symbols. You can kind of show your personality through whatever dog you have. If you can afford a more higher class dog, a purebred dog, it normally shows that you do have a little bit more money to spend. Or if you have, a lot of the times, if you have a bigger dog, normally it shows you have a bigger personality. There's a lot of things that goes into it. But dogs aren't only used for personality traits. They can be used to help physical and mental issues and problems. There's dogs for the blind. There's dogs for the deaf. There's dogs that can sense when your blood pressure's too low or too high or when you're about to faint. There's a number of things dogs are useful for today. And that's why there's so many dogs in America today. As you can see by this chart by the American Pet Products Association, it shows how many dogs there were from 2000 to 2017. There's millions and millions, and it just keeps going on the rise. So that's definitely something to think about. But according to Pedigree, the use for like physical well-being isn't the number one reason for dogs today. The most common reason for owning pets, not pants, in Western societies is companionship. In recent years, there's been a growing awareness of the positive effects that this relationship can have on human health and overall well-being, and the recognition of the therapeutic value of companionship in animals. So that's why there is an estimated 63 million families that own a dog today. And that comes from a survey conducted by the American Pets Products Association, or the APPA, conducted in the 2019-2020 year. So those are some things to think about when you look at your dog. Your dog just isn't a pet. The lifespan of a dog is crazy. You know, their history is also crazy. So when you look at your dog, don't just think of it as a pet, but make sure to respect and look at, where you came from. Thank you.